Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is October the 4th, 2024. It has been 3,903 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 226 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, 2 years and 223 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression, and 60 days since Ukraine counter-invaded Russia. Today's podcast covers the events that happened on Thursday and Friday morning. Our Russia-Ukraine war map is a great companion to the podcast, and there is a link in the podcast description. There are only small map updates today. The Russia-Ukraine war report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south, and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission: the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. There are no changes from yesterday, so if you want to skip ahead, I don't mind. I won't even know. 1. We're unsure if the current operational tempo is a new normal, or if Moscow is attempting to advance as far as possible before fall weather arrives. We maintain that the current operational tempo is unsustainable, and at some point Russian combat operations have to decline. 2. Continued nuclear threats from Moscow highlight how the world remains caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. 3. The lack of a meaningful response by Ukraine's allies and international organizations to open and unrestricted attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure by Russia has convinced Moscow this is an effective strategy with no political consequences. 4. Russia will maintain its attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, continuing Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 4 arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. The continued attacks are increasing the probability of a nuclear accident at one or more of Ukraine's nuclear power plants due to a loss of external power connections. 5. The policy of escalation management implemented by the NATO alliance and the United States is a complete failure that has only encouraged Russia to escalate hybrid and kinetic warfare actions against the NATO alliance and Ukraine's allies and their economic interests. 6. Autocrat Vladimir Putin's order to recapture the Kursk region of Russia and Toretsk, New York, Mirnograd, Pokrovsk, and Selidovo in Ukraine by October the 15th is unrealistic. 7. The Russian economy is much weaker than reported. 8. We maintain there could be a shift in Washington's policy toward Ukraine's request for deep strikes within Russia after the November the 5th national elections. Yesterday, Russia carried out 142 discrete assaults, the same number as the day before, and through October the 3rd, the 7-day moving average for daily attacks fell to 161. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, or GSAFU, reported the VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, carried out 67 airstrikes, dropping 135 bombs, and ground forces carried out approximately 4,000 fire missions. In the Kursk region, Ukraine controls 1,016 square kilometers, with another 258 in the grey zone, for a total area of 1,274 square kilometers. With only positional fighting in the Kursk Oblast, our analyst team was able to go back to analysis. According to data provided by War Mapper, in September Russia captured 468 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. It was the biggest single-month gain since March 2022, highlighting the battlefield challenges Ukrainian forces are facing. Over the last year, Ukrainian forces were forced to withdraw from 1,545 square kilometers of their land. Over half of the Russian gains were made in the last 60 days. During the same 12-month period, Ukraine liberated 50 square kilometers of its territory and captured 1,016 square kilometers of the Kursk Oblast in Russia. Multiple analysts have reviewed satellite images of the remaining reserves of Russia's large-caliber artillery systems, both towed and self-propelled, and believe that the decline of Russian capabilities has started. The latest review by Twitter, also known as X, analyst Jumpy, is Russia only has 34% of its large-caliber towed artillery system remaining in storage. Another analyst dove deeper into the data and noted that of the remaining towed mortars and small, medium and large-caliber artillery systems, only 2,150 are usable, mostly mortars. The remaining estimated 4,100 systems use irregular ammunition that is no longer in production. One example. At the beginning of 2022, Russia had approximately 4,400 D-30 122mm howitzers in outdoor storage. After 31 months of war, only 850 are left, and many appear to be in poor condition. Russia can transition to the M30 howitzer, but due to the shorter barrel, it only has an 11-kilometer range. Following the artillery rule of thirds, M30s would be located just 3,000 to 4,000 meters from the line of conflict, making them especially vulnerable to drone strikes. While North Korea will continue to prevent long-term ammunition constraints for Russia, the limiting factor has become the available number of artillery pieces and the dwindling supply of barrels. Additionally, Russia's constrained machine capabilities have to be divided between artillery and main battle tanks. On the battlefield, it was another day of high operational tempo in Ukraine with almost no changes. It's time to go into the details of the most important events over the last 24 hours. Ready? Here we go. The operational tempo remains low in the Kursk region of Russia, with only reports of localized positional fighting, airstrikes, drone attacks, artillery fire and counter-battery activity. Near Glushkova, fighting continued in the area of Veselaya, and Russian mercenary blogger Rybar dismissed new claims that Ukrainian forces withdrew from Medvezhye. The Russian Ministry of Defense, or Armad, claimed fighting continued in the area of Novy Put. Southeast of Koreneva, positional fighting was reported in the area of Lyubimovka, Nikolaeva-Daryina and Daryina. NASA Fire Information for Resource Management Systems suggested fighting continued in southeast Obukhovka, the one by Koreneva. Rybar claimed positional fighting continued in the area of Kremyana, and the VKS had increased their activity in the area. In Kurchatov, there was an explosion at a warehouse, causing a large fire and multiple secondary explosions. Local residents sharing videos reported that, quote, many soldiers ran out of the building. The warehouse is located about 6 kilometers from the Kursk nuclear power plant, and Russian officials have not released much information. There are claims a Ukrainian glide bomb caused the explosion, while others claimed it was a drone strike. There were no air raid alerts prior to the explosion, and none of the local reports claimed there was drone activity in the area. Located 78 kilometers from the Russian border, Ukraine does not have any known glide bombs in its inventory, such as the NATO alliance-provided GBU-39J DAM-AR, capable of reaching a target that far. GSAFU reported that Russia used one missile to strike Ukrainian-occupied Kursk Oblast and carried out 14 airstrikes, dropping 30 bombs. In the Sumy Oblast of Ukraine, a Russian missile or glide bomb hit the settlement of Veliky Bobrik. Armad claimed the home was a Russian command and control node for Ukrainian forces. The video did show a pickup truck arriving at the home and up to 3 potential military vehicles in the immediate area. Finally, Ukrainian officials reported a Shahed-136 struck the city of Sumy, wounding 8. Here is what's happening in my home of Ukraine. Russian assaults were conducted from Kharkiv to Kherson, with the heaviest fighting in the Pokrovsk and Kurakhove areas of operation. In the Donetsk Oblast, east of Kurakhove, Russian mechanized infantry breached Ukrainian defenses at Vostre and reached the eastern edge of Ostrivske. Recently, Russian forces have made similar rapid advances after a breach, but could not establish a ground line of communication, GLOC, that's a supply line, to support the new gains. There has been no additional information released that would support Armut's claim that Russian forces captured Verkhnyokamyansk. Several prominent Russian mail bloggers ignored the report, which has become a new form of protest against Kremlin disinformation. And for the battlefield, that's about it. If I went through the rest of the raw intelligence report, I would rattle off the names of 47 settlements where Russian assaults were carried out, with no change to the situation. In occupied Enerhodar, the main defense directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, or GUR, claimed responsibility for the attack on Russian collaborator Andrei Korotkий, who was the head of physical security at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Video showed Korotkий's SUV exploding from a powerful car bomb. During tonight's Shahed attack on Ukraine, electronic warfare deflected at least one of the drones into Belarus. Local security video captured the drone crashing in Homel, knocking out power. It's another Friday, and you know what that means. Things are blowing up in Russia again. Video captured the moment a Ukrainian drone struck the Anna Nefteprodukt oil depot in the Voronezh region.
Ребят, еще один летит. Вот он, прямо надо мной пролетает, урод. Прямо в нефтебазу летит. Вот это вот дела.
During editing, there was only a visible localized fire. However, by the time I started recording, evacuations had been ordered. On the evening of October 2nd, Ukrainian drones attacked Borysoglebsk military airfield, also in the Voronezh region. Locally recorded videos showed there were large fires at the base, but no signs of secondary explosions. When our analysts learn more, I'll share more. In the Perm Krai, a large oil depot near Asinsy caught fire. The village is over 1,500 kilometers from Kharkiv, and there were no Russian reports of drone activity in the region. Russian state media agency Kommersant reported that up to 10,000 square meters are involved, and video showed high winds were complicating firefighting efforts.
You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. Our team of journalists, researchers, and analysts is funded by readers, listeners, and viewers just like you. To support independent journalism, please consider becoming a patron. You can find us on patreon.com/malcontentnews.
Here is today's theater-wide update, and if you have your favorite coffee cup around, go ahead and hide it. I'll wait. After the United States provided air defense to Israel from an Iranian short and intermediate-range ballistic missile attack earlier this week, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, was visibly frustrated. Quote, "We see that one of the main reasons for the security deficit in the skies of Ukraine, and in particular near the borders of NATO, our neighbors, is the lack of decisions on joint operations and joint defense. What works in the skies of the Middle East and helps Israel's defense can work just as well in the skies of our part of Europe, in Ukraine, helping to save lives. Partners could shoot down missiles over Ukraine as over Israel. There is no difference." The statement came hours after Israel was accused of striking an ammunition warehouse with Iranian-provided weapons on or adjacent to the Russia-controlled Khmeimim air base in Syria. Pressed by reporters over the conflicting policy from Washington, Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh said that NATO will not provide air defense along the borders of Ukraine because these are, quote, two very different battlefields, and Washington didn't want to be, quote, drawn into a war. Singh added that the United States policy is to provide Ukraine with what it needs to defend itself, adding that Kyiv, quote, has been able to successfully defend against Russian strikes to their cities, to their populations, to their infrastructure. Moving to assessment. This was a non-answer, as the United States also provides Israel with what it needs to defend itself. However, the US armed forces engaged Iranian missiles outside of the borders of Israel in the defense of its ally. The real difference is Washington is bound by its treaties to provide mutual assistance to Israel, while it has no such agreements with Ukraine. With the IRGC-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen firing on US naval vessels, following Singh's logic, the United States is apparently at war with Iran by engaging in self-defense and the defense of Israel. Make it make sense. Maybe we should try to die a little quieter this winter. Speaking with President Zelensky in Kyiv, newly minted NATO Alliance Secretary-General Mark Rutte spoke about the issue of deep strikes within Russia. Quote, "First of all, Ukraine obviously has the right to defend itself, and international law is on the side of Ukraine, meaning that this right does not end at the state border. And Russia is pursuing this illegal war, and that means that targeting Russian fighter jets and missiles before they can be used against Ukraine's civilian infrastructure can help save lives. The only country here that has crossed a red line is not Ukraine, it is Russia, by starting this war." During the planned October the 12th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contract Group at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, US President Joe Biden reportedly will lead the discussion on authorizing deep strikes within Russia using NATO-provided weapons. Secretary-General Rutte confirmed the report. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that ATACMS missiles destroyed a Neba-M radar. The Neba-M entered service in 2017 and was designed to detect stealth aircraft like the B-2 bomber and the F-22 and F-35 fighter airplanes. Defense officials would not confirm the location, but it is widely believed to have been positioned in occupied Crimea. Russia only built 10 of the mobile radars, which cost $100 million each. According to the Oryx database, Russia has already lost 2. The first was destroyed on April 8, 2023, and the second was damaged on March 7th. Finally, the Patriot missile system pledged by Romania has reportedly arrived in Ukraine. Our War Crimes and Human Rights section can cover difficult topics, including torture, gender-based violence, war crimes, and violence against children. Today's report contains graphic details of war crimes that some may find disturbing. If this type of content is troubling, you can skip ahead to the next section. A Russian source released a video of a Ukrainian soldier who was bound and stripped to his underwear in a shallow ditch. The video starts with a close-up of the soldier's face, who is violently punched in the back of the head. He rises again, his forehead bloodied from striking the ground, and is threatened with a knife while brief words are exchanged. The video then cuts away to an open field, with a Russian soldier wearing a red tactical band around his leg, in a black t-shirt and a black hat. His face is not visible. They force the still-bound Ukrainian soldier to walk away with his back turned, then order him to stop approximately 10 meters away. The Russian soldier visible in the video, and a second where only their rifle can be seen, raise their weapons and start to fire.
Именем Российской Федерации, наемник, ты приговариваешься к смерти.
In the video, the first shot appears to miss, striking the ground in front of the Ukrainian prisoner. He tries to duck, but is hit in the upper back. He falls to the ground, face up and thrashing, and then is shot multiple times. The entire video is 33 seconds. We'll link to the video in today's situation report, and there's more information in the podcast description. For those who can't watch the video, the unnamed soldier remained defiant, showing bravery similar to Alexander Matsievsky, who was executed in a shallow grave on December 31, 2022, shouting "Glory to Ukraine." Russian forces continue to hunt civilians with drones in the Kherson region, causing roughly 10 casualties a day. Russian troops documented their war crimes. Yesterday, they posted a video of a drone following a car and then dropping a mortar round on it when it stopped, which smashed through the roof and exploded. In the city of Kherson, a woman recounted how she was attacked by a Russian drone while riding her bicycle, suffering shrapnel wounds. Russian troops posted the video, adding a winking emoji on it when the drone hit her bike. Ukraine downed a Russian Zala reconnaissance drone with the insignia of the Ukrainian armed forces, including tactical markings. The act is a war crime. Reuters Thomson journalist Ivan Lyubosh-Kirdey, who was critically injured on August 24 during a Russian attack on Kramatorsk, regained consciousness. His wife said that he recognizes almost everyone and can answer simple questions. The August Iskander-M missile strike on the Sapphire Hotel wounded 5 and killed 1. An investigation by Reuters Thomson concluded that the Russian 107th Rocket Brigade launched the missile. The Defense Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom concluded that the missile that hit the bulk cargo ship MV Aya on September 11th was a Russian Kh-22 anti-ship missile launched from a Tu-22 M3 strategic bomber. London concluded that the warhead likely didn't detonate, quote, avoiding catastrophic damage. The report also concluded that the Aya was not the intended target, and the unprofessional and poorly trained Russian air crew incorrectly identified the merchant vessel. It's back to the land of mobics, mobilization and mir. In the biggest sign that Russia's demographic crisis is accelerating and battlefield losses are being concealed, autocrat Vladimir Putin has banned the upcoming 2029 census. The last Russian leader to conceal census data was Joseph Stalin in 1937. From 2020 to 2023, it is estimated that Russian population dropped by up to 4 million people due to the COVID-19 pandemic, war, and an exodus of the well-educated, wealthy and young men with means seeking to avoid mobilization or government repression. The most recent World Health Organization report on Russia from 2023 estimated that male life expectancy has dropped to 65.6 years. The same report estimates there were 10 million more women than men. The trend isn't new, with Russia's population declining since Putin came to power, and today just 27% of Russia's citizens are under 30 years old. The political tension over Russian demographics spilled over into state media when a journalist with the state-controlled Agency 74 asked Ekaterina Mizulina, the former executive director of the National Center for Children's Assistance and Censorship Advocate, why she was childless. Mizulina, who is 40 and has promoted the Kremlin's agenda of shunning childless women, refused to answer the question, saying, quote, "I don't discuss my personal life," and then asked undercover security agents to check the journalist's background and credentials. Mizulina is unmarried and allegedly romantically linked to Putin. A member of the Russian Kamchatka battalion made a video accusing the Kremlin and the region's government of providing inadequate support and lying to troops. Quote, "The Kamchatka battalion, who were sent to slaughter, sent to our deaths. Those who weren't even trained. Children are dying here, 18-year-olds, untrained, who just joined. They've been on the range for 4 days, who haven't fired a shot because they had no ammunition. We were sent without anything. We have no food, no water, no radios, no thermal images. We have nothing. We are near Rubizhne. There is fighting here every day. No uniforms. The Ukrainians are all uniformed. I appeal to all Kamchatka residents, do not go. Do not fall for this provocation that they will provide you with everything. Yes, body armor was given, but not to everyone. Half of the people from the Kamchatka battalion are no longer here." Unquote. More assessment. The number of complaints about 18-year-old soldiers on the front lines is increasing, as are complaints about a lack of uniforms. Based near Rubizhne and saying that snipers, reconnaissance and sabotage teams, artillery and drones are causing catastrophic losses, we believe the unit is located in the Serebryansky forest, eastern Bilogorivka or occupied Dibrova. Well-equipped, battle-hardened Ukrainian units defend these areas. It also raises the question: if food, water and medicine aren't available for Russian troops operating from Rubizhne, what is happening to the population living under occupation? Our favorite FSB colonel, convicted war criminal, convicted Russian criminal, failed Mobbik and original Little Green Man as the first Minister of Defense of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, Igor Strelkov-Girkin, wrote a lengthy doom post from his gulag that was shared through his lawyer. The full statement is in today's situation report, and here are some highlights. Quote, "Strategically, everything is bad. If the bet on Trump does not work out, then the next year, or even the end of the current one, will become a very serious test for our country." The imitation style of leadership and state administration led to the fact that, on paper, the Russian Federation looked extremely impressive in all respects, including in terms of military power. In reality, a significant part of our power, very significant in some places, turned out to be inflated. Now, the needs of the war far exceed the capabilities of our military-industrial complex, and the war has long ago eaten up or is finishing to eat up all the reserves of new weapons. The same applies to trained human resources, which for 2.5 years were spent and are still being spent, as if they were endless and inexhaustible. The time to correct the grossest mistakes, which was kindly provided to us by our enemies in the West and the so-called Ukraine, due to their own incompetence and degradation, was not even wasted, it was simply missed. Without real strategic changes and measures, we will face extremely unpleasant consequences. There's a lot to unpack. The Federal Penitentiary Service would censor all of Girkin's writings. His letter would have never left the prison if Russian authorities didn't want it shared. So caution should be applied to determining if these are truly Girkin's views or what he was told to express. Girkin also appears to have access to information at the macro level that exceeds what is shared on Russian state media. Despite the caution given, if Girkin didn't write this, the real author deserves an award. The only thing missing was calling the Kremlin the planet of the pink ponies. As for the overall assessment, Girkin appears to have realized what our chief content officer stated in 2021. Russia's conventional forces were only the strength of a regional power and have been significantly degraded. We disagree with his statement that Moscow didn't take adequate advantage of delayed military aid in late 2023 into the spring of 2024. Russia continued intense attacks on Avdiivka, Chasiv Yar and Novomykhailivka throughout the period. Avdiivka was captured in February and Novomykhailivka in April. The loss of Avdiivka enabled Russian forces to capture the strategic settlement of Ocheretine, which set conditions for Russia's current offensive on Mirnograd and Pokrovsk. The loss of Novomykhailivka set conditions that led to the capture of Vuhledar. We do agree that Russia is rapidly depleting its Cold War dividend of stored military equipment, and the reliance on human wave attacks is in the long term unsustainable. We also strongly agree that Russia's military-industrial complex cannot support the current operational tempo, and the biggest danger Moscow is facing in 2025 is not on the battlefield, but economically. You may notice there is a theme in today's podcast: Russia's growing list of internal and economic issues. I haven't talked about economics in months. Let me bring you up to speed. The Russian central bank is openly discussing raising the prime lending rate to 20% or higher in October as efforts to control continued inflation fall flat. It is unclear how a new increase will stem inflation, which is fueled by the increased costs of busting sanctions, expanding government spending to support the war of aggression against Ukraine, and an accelerating shortage of workers. Due to banking sanctions, the central bank no longer uses global exchange rates for the ruble, instead setting the rate on a daily basis as was done in the Soviet era. The official rate for today is 95 rubles for $1. The published official rate only applies to large transactions between nations, with the street rate considerably worse. Sanctions are also making it increasingly difficult to make foreign transactions. Russian state media agency TASS reported that a new trade agreement made by the Russian company Astarta Agro Trading will provide Pakistan with chickpeas and lentils while accepting rice and mandarin oranges as payment. Reportedly, Moscow tried to negotiate a barter trade agreement with Beijing in August, but China wasn't receptive to the idea. That's right, the new BRICS currency is here. No more petrodollars. Now it's Russian chickpeas. Saudi Arabia may be set to deal the Russian economy a devastating blow, signaling that it will move to end production limits in early 2025. The OPEC Plus nations have extended a long-standing 2.2 million barrels a day production cut twice in an attempt to lift oil prices to $100 a barrel. While oil tickled the target price a couple of times in the last 2 years, it has mainly traded between $80 and $85. Global oversupply and a wobbly Chinese economy recently sent oil to $70 a barrel, with many analysts forecasting crude will trade between $60 and $70 in 2025. The reason OPEC couldn't reach its price targets is complex. Russia has been ignoring its commitments to cut production, as have several other OPEC nations. Angola left the cartel at the start of 2024 due to the quotas and increased production to over 1 million barrels per day. Outside of OPEC, the United States has become the largest producer of crude oil on the planet and is a net exporter, continuing record production levels through 2024. While many within the cartel have been cheating, Saudi Arabia has adhered to production limits. Riyadh is signaling they've had enough, and if necessary, they are willing to enter a trade war that could see oil fall to $50 a barrel. What does this mean for Russia? Oil at $50 a barrel would end Russia's ability to sell at a discount. If buyers can purchase oil at under $60 a barrel, there is no reason to risk running afoul of sanctions or having to accept chickpeas as payment. That leaves the increasingly financially isolated nation with two choices. 1. Cut back government spending, which autocrat Putin won't do. Or 2. Take out additional loans to support the treasury, which will increase interest rates and inflation. At $50 a barrel, Russia faces another problem. The average extraction cost is roughly $45, depending on a wide range of factors. If Saudi Arabia starts a trade war, Russia could be forced to sell oil at cost. Everything is going to plan. And that's what we know. Join me again on Monday, and we'll do it all over again. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.